A grey April day chases its cold, wet wind around the tents. It is the Tuesday before Easter in the Christian world, but that does not hinder the Americans from ordering us onto the camp road with our personal possessions. Angrily, we pack our bundles and are ready to march out at the designated time. After the last filtering, which took Brilla from us, there are less than 500 non-commissioned officers left. And now we say farewell in silence from this field, which has almost become a second home. Yes, the Americans have time. It is already noon, and we are still camped at the gate without any food. After the initial unrest, which changed into blunt indifference, the whole crowd now threatens to fly into a wild irritation. They think we are fools, the first voices sound. Let us go back to the tents, the impatient ones demand. But unstilled, the wind continues to blow its eternal song. Let's go, shouts Bill H. Turner after the hours of waiting and opens the door. We march in a southerly direction through rows of at least 200 American soldiers who stand on both sides of the road, past Poles, Czechs and Austrians, a colourful collection of European nationalities, and all are in German uniforms. We leave the collective camps of Cherbourg and reach the highway on which we were beaten here on December 7th, 1944. How peaceful, yes, nearly sympathetic, do the front soldiers march next to us today. All their weapons are shouldered. Not one hate-filled word comes from their lips. Silently, friend and enemy enter Cherbourg. Even the French do not move a finger at our appearance. Unmolested, we reach the harbour and stumble over the boardwalk along the harbour, until suddenly we are ordered to halt in front of 3 anchored US ships. Now an icy horror grips the thoughts of the prisoners, but we have no time. Immediately foreign hands are shoved against our will into our pockets and throw all the handmade knives, boxes and cartons into the water, while the accompanying officers go on board one of the ships and greet the captain like an old comrade. A little later we are shoved in double rows over a small gangplank and through an iron doorframe into the body of the American troop transport Thomas Marshall. It is 4 o'clock in the afternoon when a voice over the loudspeaker calls our attention to the gigantic mountain of cartons of crackers stored in a corner of the large room in which we are quartered. "Everyone is free to take as much as he wants," the voice maintains, and causes an unbelievable laughter to break out. Still, like pilgrims to a holy mountain, we make our way into the corner, and the pile melts like snow in the March sun. Unbelievable confusion then breaks out. Soon the Americans appear, and through their presence bring order back to the crowd. The old tent groups find themselves in front of 5-story bunks, which are constructed out of iron bars and canvas. On each bed is a blanket and a life jacket, which can be used as a pillow. While the bunks are located along the walls of the ship, in the middle of the room are tables and benches which remind one of a barracks mess hall. Right next to the room is the galley, where the cooks are busy. The washroom and toilets are below and lie at about the level of the water. The ship makes a splendid impression, even though its facilities seem quite unusual for land rats. At 5 o'clock, 2 guards arrive. That is, they sit in our room at a table in the back between the stairs to the lower level and the entrance to the galley. They hold their weapons tight. 10 minutes later, they recognize that their presence is ridiculous, and they lay their weapons behind them. When the officer responsible for the prisoners enters the room with the captain and inspects his guards, he sends them away, satisfied with our conduct and the cleanliness of our quarters. With friendly words, he then explains that no one on board needs to go hungry. There are plenty of provisions. With this explanation, he wins over all the prisoners, who express their enthusiasm by a spontaneous round of applause. Shortly after 6 o'clock, Hocker calls the first eaters to receive their food. Whoever thought that there would be a mad rush on the galley in response to Hocker's call is pleasantly surprised. Then the comrades line up in rows without pushing or shoving. This can be attributed to the distribution of the crackers and the speech by the American officer. Besides, it is an old practice that when there are plenty of things available, no one has an overriding interest in them. Even though cooking is child's play for Hocker because all he has to do is to stir the prepared food into boiling water, he and his helpers are at work until 8 o'clock in uninterrupted service, as men from the starvation camps continue to reappear for God knows how many times with their empty plates. Finally, the biggest glutton lies on his cot with a full belly. As we 4 friends gather around a table, the electric lamps light the faces of the prisoners, who are satisfied with God and the world. Now we know the purpose for the interrogations. I open our first conversation since leaving the camp. They are taking us away from firm land because we still present a threat to them, Schultz rasps, quite downtrodden. If they just do not take us to England, Hocker joins in. I do not think so, because we are on an American ship and our guards are apparently returning to the USA on leave. I brush Hocker's fear aside. As far as I am concerned, they can take us to the moon. The main thing is that hunger has come to an end. Siegfried does not conceal his joy about the plentiful food on board. If you ever get enough to eat, then I would like to finally hear something reasonable come from your mouth, Schultz thunders at him. That the war is as good as lost for us does not change any of the facts with our long stay in France. But I don't see why we were not sent to America before, especially since the danger of being turned over to the French in the next little while seemed quite real. It is true that in the USA we will not be treated as vacation guests, but for whatever work we do, they will at least give us enough to eat, something that never was and never will be the case in France. I have felt it myself, and I am thankful today that fate has placed me on this boat. You know, I will not kiss any Americans behind, but I like them a lot better than the French. For us prisoners of war, it is very simple. We only have to survive the chaos unless someone intends to commit suicide. I am far from that. Just the opposite. I feel myself obligated to keep myself healthy so that later I can be of long service to my fatherland. That is our assignment from destiny, and that is why I am going to get me a couple of crackers as long as they are in supply, Siegfried says, and goes with a smile toward the greatly reduced mountain of cartons. Impressed by Siegfried's viewpoint, we 3 stare at the linoleum-covered tabletop. With inner satisfaction, I admire Siegfried's insight, and especially that he could express it so clearly in such few words after such a long time. It had taken me weeks to work through the issues. So, Schultz, have you digested what I gave you to swallow? Siegfried asks as he takes his place after shoving a carton full of crackers between us. I have only determined that you are beginning to think. Eat another pot empty, and then perhaps you can imagine the map of North America. Then I will show you an area that is not far from Siberia, but is just as cold and thinly populated, Schultz explains in dead earnest. I know what you mean. Still, I would rather hunt bear in Alaska than stay in France and clean up rubbish on an empty stomach. Siegfried chuckles in satisfaction. Perhaps he is right. Schultz turns to Hocker and me as he reaches for a cracker. Siegfried's opinions are in complete agreement with mine, I explain, satisfied by this conversation. I only need a recipe for bear meat. Actually, it is really too bad that old Briller is not with us. He was an excellent shot. Hocker laments our lost friend, for which I throw him an understanding glance. Around 10 p.m. a shiver runs through the ship. Unnoticed by us, the Thomas Marshall has left the Cherbourg harbour and steams under its own power toward the sea. The European mainland, our homeland, our families, everything that is important and dear to us, sinks in the night and fog behind us, while the fury of this most terrible war slowly but surely eats at our hearts. Wild battle sounds rage around me. My eyes, blinded by the flash of grenades, are buried in the sandbags in front of my observation post. The murderous fire bursts from the fighter planes and cracks into the steel helmets of the attacking soldiers. A dreadful-looking enemy grabs my wrists and says tranquilly, "Come, Helmut, wake up, otherwise the coffee will be cold." Are you crazy? I stare angrily at Siegfried and realize immediately that I was dreaming. Around me hums the noise of the ventilation system. The life jacket indicates the impression of my forehead where I sought refuge from the unaccustomed electrical lights. The room rings with the tinny sound of dishes. Damn it all, I say, and climb out of my bunk to drink my coffee, while Siegfried looks at me, shaking his head. Is this can standing still? I ask Hocker and Schultz, still completely confused but feeling a fearful pressure around my heart, because at the most the ship could only have reached England. Did you just notice that, you sleepyhead? Hocker smiles comfortably. Don't you have any idea what that could mean for us? I ask, amazed at their satisfied faces. So what could it mean? Schultz shrugs his shoulders indifferently. We will be unloaded in England, you fools. I slowly become unfriendly. Blessed are they that sleep a long time. Then they first notice later what has been tormenting the others for hours, Schultz explains in good humour. Drink your coffee, Helmut, and calm down. We don't have to get out here. Hocker pats my heated cheeks. Why is the ship standing still? The guards say that we are waiting off England and will join a convoy, probably tonight, for the States. I finally get a plausible answer from Siegfried and can eat my breakfast in peace. While we friends are in the washroom to shave and wash ourselves, a voice sounds through the loudspeaker and announces that after 8 o'clock we can go on deck for an hour in groups of 100 men. Feverishly we try to wash the soap we have brought from Cherbourg from our bodies, but we are unsuccessful. Finally we notice that only salt water comes out of the pipes, and it does not react to the usual soap. But there is enough ship soap around that the problem is quickly solved. Exactly at 8 o'clock, the door through which we entered yesterday is opened, and a flood of 100 interested spectators pours onto the deck. Shoved toward the railing, I lift my gaze. Yes, over there, wrapped in a gentle veil of fog, lies England. In the meantime, the sun has broken through. There is great excitement all over the ship. Crew, guards, and prisoners stand for the first time shoulder to shoulder. With a typical seaman's gait, Siegfried comes toward me. So, my faithful Eckehard of the Ragfoot Squadron, how do you like it with the Navy? He asks, full of pride now that he finally feels the deck under his feet. Up to now, excellent, you unemployed coolie, I respond in the best mood. There are a lot of people among us who have suddenly become world travellers against their own will. He calls my attention to several gloomy-looking comrades. You are right. It is the older ones who are worried, while the younger ones are obviously carried away with the spirit of adventure, I add to his observation. What do you promise us in America? He asks with a clouded forehead. It is hard to say, I respond, and gaze out over the endless appearing sea. Oh well, it cannot be any worse than we have had up to this time. He comforts himself. Certainly not. America is no closed group of people. It is the melting pot of the entire world. We will not be greeted exclusively with hate, especially since the country has been untouched by the war and has plenty of citizens of German ancestry. I confirm my agreement. Let's be surprised, he suggests confidently, and pushes me back down below since our time on deck has run out. After a restful afternoon nap, we assemble at 4 o'clock around coffee. Despite the mass production, Hocker understands very well how to get the best out of the coffee powder. Tastes like Mum's, Schultz says, and that means something, because on this point he is a real connoisseur. There are plenty of cookies to go with the coffee. Among the Americans on board, it is said that the Germans not only know how to conduct war, but also how to eat. The man next to me, a tall Bavarian, reports. Funny people, these Americans, Schultz continues. When I first came into their hands, they immediately gave me something to eat. It was a strong chicken soup with a lot of meat. The man who brought it to me was so moved by his hospitality that I was afraid he was going to burst into tears. Just as I finished the soup and wanted to start on the precious meat, another came and kicked the cup out of my hand so that the scraps of meat flew through the air. Afterward, it was 3 days before I got anything more to eat. Now we can eat until our belly bursts, but I think once we land we will go hungry again. You should have eaten the meat first, but I can imagine that you sat for hours stirring the soup, and that had apparently made the American angry. Therefore eat now, Schultz, so that you have something on your ribs when we go hungry again. Siegfried counsels him lustily. Later we must exist on the fat in our intestines. Damn right you are. Pass the box of crackers here. He follows this advice without delay. 2 hours later, Hocker passes out the evening meal. The door to the deck is closed tightly, and 2 guards sit again at the table. Now this unusual precaution by the Americans does not bother us. Everyone regrets that he does not have a buckle on his belly because the food tastes so good. Even Schultz shows what he can accomplish with eating. Again and again we three step to the doorway of the galley until Hocker raises a warning finger. That stuff will stir up your stomach. Be careful, you eating machines, otherwise you will explode. Strangely enough, after the fourth helping, we cannot eat anymore. Are we full? We say in amazement to each other. Impossible, everyone says to himself. Then we still have the desire to eat. That's enough, friends. Schultz gathers up the dishes. The stomach must get used to it again. If you demand too much of it, then you will have to pay the price. Tired and filled to the top button on our shirts, we slip into our bunks. At 8:30 p.m, the engines start running. The ship shakes and water splashes on board. Farewell, Europe. Dear homeland, may God protect you. Right after breakfast, certain sergeants are ordered on deck. A rescue maneuver is underway. Foggy weather greets us as we push through the small door into the free air. All around us, boats of all types are steaming to the west. A convoy, a feast for the submarines. We have a long way ahead of us, and there is the possibility that we must abandon ship without reaching our goal. A scrubby member of the crew begins his address, which is translated immediately by an interpreter. For this purpose, you must be instructed how the lifeboats that are assigned to you are to be lowered into the water. I call your attention to the fact that in an emergency, no one can worry about you, and therefore I ask you to pay close attention how things are to be done. In addition, I would like to recommend that the entire maneuver be so organized among you that everyone will know to which boat he is assigned. There are enough ships around us that if necessary they can take care of all of us. By the way, our people are in the process of putting rope ladders all around the ship. We cannot do anything more for your safety. Now please follow my instructions carefully. That's all that is missing, that the good Admiral Dönitz sends his grey wolves after our throats. Schultz whispers to me after the maneuver has ended, and we are once again on our way below. If they find us, they will go after the largest vessels. Our little steamer belongs to the Liberty class and is not worth a torpedo. I comfort myself and him. Aren't your brothers in the Navy? He asks me, remembering a conversation from an earlier day. Yes, but not any more in these waters since my oldest was killed, I confirm. Oh well, then you can sink into a watery grave and don't have to trouble yourself with thoughts that it was your own brother who sent you to the bottom of the ocean, he says. Man, that is pretty bad. Why isn't this ship marked with a red cross? The first offence by the Americans against the Geneva Convention comes to mind. I don't understand it either. They could make these little ships immune from German torpedoes, he says as we arrive at our bunks. We must send the interpreter to the officers. Perhaps they will at least raise a Red Cross flag. I see a possibility to protect ourselves. I will speak to the man afterward about it. Schultz nods and climbs in the direction of his bunk. At 2 p.m, Hocker is among us once again. As curious as the first people, we stand on the deck of the ship and look out at the armada which ploughs through the quiet ocean in a zigzag course, as though led by a magician's hand. Siegfried does not grow tired of offering explanations. We are coming into a bad weather zone, he says, turning his eyes in all directions. His ears are pointed slightly ahead, and there is a furrow between his eyebrows. His rust-red hair flutters in the wind. It does not look good for at least half of our comrades, he indicates somewhat dramatically, with a grin of ridicule in his good-looking face. What do you mean for half of them? I ask, disturbed. Because they certainly will have to throw up when the dance starts, he explains calmly. Slowly the ship lifts its nose and then slowly lets it sink. The vessel does not have enough springs. Schultz swallows suspiciously and follows with a sour smile. The chest has just taken a deep breath. Siegfried grins maliciously. My eyes glide across the water desert, somewhat disturbed, while a slight nausea creeps up inside of me. Small grey-black hills pass by the ships. Sometimes they spray up as in shock in front of the deck. What a mess, Schultz growls as the first spray comes over the rail and throws salty drops of water onto his freshly shaved skin. It is just the beginning. Siegfried can no longer withhold a wide grin. Look there, the first are already starting to throw up, he shouts in unrestrained malicious joy. Keep your mouth shut, you damn Oh, no, Schultz crows. and then suddenly leans over the rail. I too am sick as a dog, and the others laugh. "Is it that far, Helmut?" Siegfried asks in ridicule. "You will know then the first load is going in your face," I reply, disgusted with everything. "I am going to lie down. Perhaps then I will feel better." Schultz turns from the rail and stumbles as though he is drunk, and I follow him without delay. Hour after hour I am tied to my bed. Only in the horizontal position is the rocking bearable for me. But my head pounds. 1,000 little devils sit in my stomach, pushing up into my throat as soon as I try to stand. I have no desire for food, and every conversation is unpleasant. In bad spirits, I stare at the iron ship walls and listen to the rustle of the water until sleep takes this vile sickness from my consciousness. A restless night lies behind me and the other seasick victims. But this morning I feel somewhat better. After I wash myself in the filthy washroom, I go to Hocker to receive my breakfast. "Man, your face is as white as the wall," he greets me, concerned. "That is quite a feeling, let me tell you." I wave as though I have been beaten. "Wait a moment. I will brew you some coffee. In the meantime, take these frankfurters and don't let anyone else see you." He shoves a long, slender can into my pocket. I give up and sit down on a stool. Hocker flits around his kingdom as though the life of a dear brother is at stake. Indifferently, I look around the room. There is a plentiful supply of spinach cans and meat cans stacked in a corner. 4 men are busy opening the cans. Even without being seasick, this kind of life would make me throw up. Now that we have plenty to eat, it does not taste good. Is this the way it is for rich people who have sick stomachs? Now drink this. Hocker hands me a large cup from out of which the strong smell of coffee rises to my nose. "And if you have any other wish that I can fulfill, you know I will handle it." "Thanks, Willie, and you stay healthy. Don't you feel anything from this damn rocking?" I wonder about his apparently normal situation. "Not in the least. Send Schultz in so that I can also take care of him. By the way, Siegfried has been put to work by the Americans, since some of the dishwashers are absent because of seasickness." He gives me the latest news as I leave, and I feel very thankful for his friendship. But Hocker's coffee is not meant for me. I have hardly swallowed it before it turns around and comes up and over the deck into the salty element. Schultz does not have any luck with it either. Together we kneel to the north and offer everything to the water gods. Everywhere, on all corners and ends, men are hanging over the deck, throwing up everything but the soul in their bodies. The guards disappeared long ago and exchanged their weapons for washcloths. Friend and enemy are united under the same misery, seasickness. When Siegfried comes on deck during his break at 2 p.m., it seems that the fun over our condition has left. "Come on, get away from the railing and go to the middle of the ship," he says with a voice that does not tolerate any opposition. "Sit down here. I will get your blankets and coats. Wait for me," he commands like a concerned father who has about had it with the nonsense of his children. Shaking from the cold and sickness, we lean against a chest of tools at midships while the Thomas Marshall bounces over the hill-sized waves. The wind's velocity has increased. The mountains of clouds hang low and darken the day. "So," says Siegfried, returning with our blankets and coats, "wrap up and put on your life jackets. Don't look forward nor backward, but straight into the sky, or else close your eyes tight. This is the best place in the entire ship. There is vomit all over down below. That makes even the strongest sick." Without contradiction, we follow his advice. But this unusual sickness will not leave us. True, after an hour it is somewhat better, but perhaps we are just imagining it. In any case, there is no longer joy in living. All around us is the same misery. Only small groups stand here and there as commentators. "Throw up everything, comrade, then you have your peace," I hear the suggestion from some wise guy. "But be careful." Another raises a finger in warning and shows his horse-face grin. "If a brown ring comes up, then you must swallow it again immediately, because it is your asshole." The evening meal proceeds in a manner unworthy of human beings. Swallowing and vomiting follow in a senseless rhythm. The men squat deathly pale before their dishes, out of which the soup spills and tables and benches are covered. But no strife develops. Every other man is sick as a dog and robbed of his will. At 9 o'clock, the ship's captain announces that during the night the storm will hit. "That means number 10-sized waves, gentlemen," Siegfried comments, looking at Schultz and me with regret. "I will get tin biscuit cans with removable lids for you," Hocker thoughtfully suggests. Provided by Hocker with an empty and a full biscuit can which are squeezed between the ship's wall and the bunk's diagonal bars, I await sleep as the saviour from distress and torment. For days the Thomas Marshall has squeezed through the storm-tossed sea. Mighty waves roll over its deck and tear away everything that is not nailed or tied down. Night-black rain clouds push against its main mast and pour streams of wrathful tears unmercifully upon its body of steel. Heaven and hell, storm and water have united in a wild inferno of nature's power. The brave ship totters westward, moaning and groaning and threatening to be torn apart at the seams, while inside the most complicated creations of an almighty God have been humbled to the most pitiable creatures. While they seek a hold, they spit the last juices from their bodies. Weak and miserable, a listless bundle of flesh and bones, whose inner functions have been turned around, and who is unable to bring any resistance to this ridiculous sickness, I lie on a small piece of canvas throughout the long hours of the endless days and nights, totally exhausted, until I am ready to exhale what little bit of life remains inside me. It is not much different for Schultz and the rest of the seasick. The exhaust system does not function because of a technical problem, and the air is a mixture of oil, fat, soup, coffee, cigarette smoke, and the vomit of the seasick. The tables, benches, pots and pans and boxes have broken loose and clatter around the room, as though they are under the influence of a magnetic power. Now it is finally clear to us that the weathertight quarters is an evil, windowless cellar, under whose iron floor the ocean rages. And whether we want it or not, there is no escape, because up above the sea bellows as though Judgment Day had begun. At the same hour, a message spreads around the Earth's globe which could serve to turn the world around. It even reaches us in our deep cellar. The President of the United States has died of a stroke. This report hits like a torpedo in our room in the ship, but we are not now able to ponder the consequences or discuss them. It is 3 a.m. Over the loudspeaker comes the order to put on our life jackets. The storm has become stronger. The Thomas Marshall is, for all practical purposes, a toy for the unfettered elements. Completely apathetic and driven only by a gnawing fear from the most remote corner of my heart, I act according to the order and pull on my life jacket. Hocker and Siegfried swing out of the bunks and stand on the floor ready to help Schultz and me if we fall. "Prepare to die," Hocker comments with a serious face about the situation. In the process of leaving the bunks, the furiously rolling ship takes a thundering hit against its bottom that must be a torpedo or mine exploding. Immediately complete disorder develops. Panic-stricken, those in front dash up the stairway and bang with their fists against the closed bulkhead. In the next moment, a voice over the loudspeaker hinders the chaos. "Attention, there is no reason for excitement. A swell has simply pushed the front of the ship out of the water and let it smash on top of a huge wave. In 5 hours, the storm will be past and we will be in a calmer zone. Again, no reason for excitement, no reason for excitement. In 5 hours, we will be in a calmer zone." With hanging heads and slightly ashamed, but freed for the moment from the pressing fear, everyone reels back into his bunk. But outside, the storm and ocean rage and bellow undiminished. It is 8 o'clock in the morning of this laudable day, the 14th of April. Schultz and I sit with our backs against the tool chest on deck in the wonderful sunshine, looking relieved over the endless but finally calm desert of water. Our brave Thomas Marshall has proven itself to be a tough fellow in the last stormy days. With a bearable rocking movement, it heads westward again today in the company of its brothers and sisters, while its strange human freight of prisoners comes out to recuperate. Naturally, it is quite fresh so early in the morning, but it is a clear day. Only a few single shreds of clouds, chased by the spent wind, pass over us. A harmless series of waves rolls ahead. The ship is running with the wind. In the meantime, Hocker is busy as a cook for the Americans, and is in competition with Siegfried to help the two of us failures to get on our feet again. One tries to outdo the other in stealing delicacies. Condensed canned milk and wonderful bread rolls with jam make up our breakfast. Hocker has promised salmon and mayonnaise at 10 o'clock, and Siegfried plans to take care of lunch. Considering everything, we have every reason to be satisfied with the way the day is going, but we are not, at least not Schultz. "It is bad enough to tear out your tail," he observes, using a vulgar expression I had never heard from him before. Now, when we are finally free of the eternal worry about food, we have to vomit the intestines out of our belly. "Why didn't they spare us the food?" he asks, upset. "In that case, they would keep it right away," I explain with a sneering laugh. "You cannot make them responsible for the storm. That would be unjust. Just look at yourself. You are well on the way to kiss the Americans' asses because they do not let you starve on their garbage can." He hisses at me. Surprised, I take a closer look at him. He is very pale. Isolated red spots lie on his protruding cheekbones. The deer brown eyes lie nearly extinguished in the sockets, and deep furrowed wrinkles radiate out from the corners of his eyes. Deep blue shadows lie under the eyes. The temples seem to be slightly fallen in and are suddenly covered with grey hairs. The man appears very sick and dreadfully exhausted. My God, I think, what he must have suffered, as an undescribable feeling of sympathy enters my heart. "But Schultz," I say with good intentions, "what is wrong with you? I don't know you this way." "Neither do I. Excuse me, but everything is distasteful to me. If they had only left us in Cherbourg." At 2 p.m., Hocker and Siegfried join us. The American cooks have given them the afternoon off. "Do you notice it is becoming colder?" Siegfried asks sympathetically as he sees us shivering. "I have felt it for a long time," Schultz rasps. "Do you know why?" he asks, full of excitement. I have already said, we are headed in the direction of Alaska. Schultz wants to outdo him. "But this time you are completely wrong, Chief. Our march route will take us to Boston, where I have relatives, or direct to New York. I have seen the maps. By the way, they are hanging below the upper deck on the starboard side, where the officers' and the steersman's berths are located, directly between the third and fourth bulwark on the wall. You can see for yourself. No one will say anything. This can is almost in German hands. We have some pretty bold dogs among us. They run around as though the ship belongs to them. Stop your seamen's tales. I want to know why it is colder." Schultz interrupts Siegfried's glibness. "You are unthankful for good news, but I will still tell you. Today we had an interesting and unusual encounter. Don't make it so dramatic," I join in. "Are we going to meet the ice-cold Stalin, perhaps? More icy and without a moustache. Icebergs," he says with awe. "So what?" Schultz asks. "Perhaps we will bump into one of them and then our asses will be on vacation." "Then I must disappoint you if you are so ready to leave this life. No, all joking aside, there are supposed to be 2 gigantic pieces of ice. The captain is well oriented. There will be nothing of mermaids, Schultz." Siegfried rejoices, thankful for the change. "If you have looked at the map, how far is it to the New World?" I ask with interest, because I still long for firm ground, despite the fine care on board. "We have completed about half of the trip," Siegfried notes, downcast. "So how is that possible? We have already been underway for 10 days. I know that it is over 4,000 miles from Cherbourg to New York, and a ship can make the trip in 14 days at the most." I express my doubts. "Exactly, you said it. A ship. But we are travelling together and only go as fast as the slowest ship. Besides, we are still at war, and because of the submarines we are following a zigzag course. Furthermore, we have lost time because of the storm. You see, my calculations are right." He tries to convince me. "If we only had good weather, I mean just for the 2 of you. As far as I am concerned, the ship could take us all around the earth." Hocker confesses and looks shyly to the side, awaiting a barrage of protest. But neither Schultz nor I are upset about it. Just the opposite. One could agree with him if it were not for the awful seasickness. "Iceberg in sight." The call sounds throughout the entire ship. Starboard ahead, iceberg in view. And everything else is forgotten. Friend and enemy stand in thick clumps pressed together on the starboard railing, staring with the same feeling to the west. It is a natural iceberg which melts, at least for the moment, the artificial icebergs in the people on board the Thomas Marshall. but there is nothing more to see than a blinding white mass, which is not bigger or higher than a sugar loaf rising out of the dark water. But still, people now speak happily in different languages to each other. Iceberg. What a magical word. It is 3 o'clock. The sun stands in the southwest, fantastically lighting the continually growing crystal colossus, which, because of the imposing view, awakes in us memories of the gruesome shipwrecks of earlier days. That was in our 4th grade reading book, the story of the emigrant who found a 4-leaf clover and wasted so much time that he did not pay attention to his ship that he ran into an iceberg and everything was lost. I hear someone behind me say. He must have really liked that story if he can still remember it today. I nudge Hocker, who turns with a grin to look at the speaker. That was around 1912, in any case, shortly before the First World War, that an English luxury ship on its maiden voyage collided with an iceberg and sank with the richest people on board. Yes, that is right. I have heard about it, his neighbour remembers. Didn't that have to do with the Blue Band? A third voice chimes in. No, my friend. A fourth mixes into the topic. It was a millionaire on board with whom the captain was in love, but did not have any luck with her. That is why he steered the steamer with full intent into the iceberg. Not with power, I interrupt him to pull his leg. Idiot, he mumbles arrogantly and goes on. He wanted the whole brood to drown like rats. Stop, that is not quite right. The first one contradicts him. What is not exactly right? The romantic defends his newly discovered love story. I know, because I'm older than you. The ship was named the Titanic, and at that time was something of a world wonder in the realm of sea travel. That's right, just leave love out of the game. As far as rich people are concerned, the only thing that matters is money. In this case, it was the Blue Band of the shipping trade. I read the book, so I am informed about the matter, another listener states bluntly. So, you read the book. Do you believe you always find the truth in books? I know better, you can count on it, the hard-headed one insists on his fairy tale. Keep your mouth shut, otherwise the iceberg will sink in front of us out of shame. The reader finishes him off, but the iceberg does not move because of the nonsense spoken by its observers. Proud and unapproachable, it follows its course while on the horizon 2 more appear. Seized by respectful awe, no one can take his gaze away from these giants of ice. At 5:40 p.m. we are parallel with the 2 majestic mountains to our north, about 4 miles away. Only a third of its mass sticks out of the water, Siegfried explains to us, and thereby unleashes a big discussion. Then you can figure out exactly how tall the cold wanderers are. Another one behind us picks up the topic. For that, you must know how high the part is above the water, another interested commentator adds. That is garbage with gravy. If 2/3 of it were under the water, it would have hit bottom long ago, the old know-it-all reports, and we 4 quietly decide to pull his arm. Look there, I scream like I am possessed. On the middle glacier in the crack, a polar bear is climbing up. Man, she has her cubs with her. Hocker follows my bellowing. Where? Everyone pushes to the rail. Don't push so carelessly, Siegfried growls. The beast is big enough to be seen from anywhere. My eyes are old. I cannot see it very well, but I feel sorry for the poor bears. They must have missed the chance to jump off when the Colossus was formed in the North Pole. Schultz joins our ring of liars, which stimulates the intensive search over the immense ice mass even more. Only the devil knows where they are, someone complains behind me. Man, don't you have eyes? We hear the voice of the fairy teller. They're on the left projection by the big crack. I discovered them long ago. The man brags with the same bravado and conviction that he dished out the captain's story. But Hocker cannot keep up the falsehood. Roaring laughter drives the tears from his eyes and mucus gushes from both nostrils. Immediately, Siegfried and I join him in malicious laughter until it becomes uncomfortable because those we deceived are furious with us. Today, the 3rd storm-free day, the Thomas Marshall steams through the blue floods of the Atlantic, with a beautiful and magical red dawn back to the east. Trusting dolphins accompany the ship and make the hearts of those on board happy with their presence. Generously, the comrades throw biscuits into the never-satisfied mouths of the great grey-black fish, which seem to know how to give their thanks with their entertaining dives. Groups of prisoners have been formed which consider certain dolphins their own and even give them names. Again and again, the faithful sea animals show their attractive backs before they dive and swim under the ship to feed on biscuits from their sponsors on the other side. Leaning on the rail, I think, what poor fish. A few weeks ago, these same men who now feed them would have risked their necks to snatch one of your fins. Why so deep in thought? A familiar voice sounds in my ear. Oh, what a pleasure, Dr. Braun, personally, so early in the morning. I greet my philosophy teacher. The doctor is hanging in Flensburg in his closet. He clappers with his large false teeth. The main thing is that your mind is here and still intact. The hat is only for show. I comfort him. That's exactly right. Otherwise, did you survive the seasickness? He asks, and throws a biscuit to a beautiful dolphin. They are the first animals that we have seen for a long time, and I love animals very much. He excuses his frivolity as he notices my surprised expression. Yes, we have them. I nod with double meaning and look somewhere over the endless water. I see that you don't enjoy the game, but you are right. We can never again join up so easily with human fools. He comforts me. People forget easily. Perhaps it is good that way, at least in most cases, I explain, reconciled. In some cases, yes, but that they have forgotten to mark this American ship with a red cross is not only punishable idiocy, but a blow against all international agreements. I have just read in a magazine that someone lent me that the victors will sit in judgment over us and find us guilty of war crimes. He steers into political waters. Let them write what they want. Paper is patient. When the killing is over, they are just as much murderers as we. I hope that I am not disturbing you, Schultz says respectfully as he joins us. No, I comfort him. Braun is also upset because the ship is not marked. The interpreter spoke with the Americans about it, but they did not give him any explanation. It is best if we do not make a state issue of the matter. Otherwise, we will harm the good feeling in our ranks. As long as no one is aware of the danger in which we swim, they will not worry about it, Schultz says, always concerned about keeping others from becoming upset. Do you think that we are unnecessarily exposed to danger? Braun becomes lively. This Atlantic Ocean is a war zone. According to the Geneva Convention, the Americans are responsible to inform the German Navy headquarters through Geneva about the transport, just as with the transportation of wounded. Unfortunately, none of the warring powers inform their soldiers about these provisions. The reason is obvious. Some soldiers would choose imprisonment over a hero's death if they knew what kind of favorable conditions awaited them behind barbed wire because of the Geneva Convention. What use are these agreements on paper when no devil pays any attention to them? I throw in. Don't say that, Braun indicates. I had the opportunity for 4 months to watch what was going on in a prison camp. The inmates were mostly English flyers, seamen and commandos. I can only tell you they lacked nothing. The German camp leadership stood on its head whenever a big shot came for an inspection, or whenever a neutral control commission showed up. Did they also have a brothel? Siegfried jumps into our serious conversation, which brings a look of disgust from Braun. Oh well, overlooking Siegfried's rudeness, we will soon see how far the Americans live up to the international agreements in their own land. As Braun is called away by his friends, we three are alone. In the meantime, the sky has become cloudy, and a strong wind blows over the sea. The Thomas Marshall slowly begins to vibrate. Its masthead bends as much as 30 degrees forwards and then back. A storm is coming, I'm sorry to inform you, Siegfried says, giving thoughtful attention to the whistling of the wind. Then let's go to our bunks, I suggest to Schultz, as he already seems queasy. I have some delicate intestines for both of you. Are you hungry? Siegfried grins like a rascal. Bring the delicacies to the bunks so that they are digested when the great vomiting begins. I wave to him as I make my way below deck. Around 4 o'clock, the cooks have trouble keeping the coffee in the pots. They quickly look to get rid of the hot drinks in order to keep from getting scalded. Meanwhile, the ship steams courageously with its hard-working machines through the broiling sea. In my bunk, I follow fearfully the irregular rocking movements, which up to this hour have remained bearable. But in time, the ship starts to roll. Tired, I close my eyes. As much as the pen may resist writing down this lunacy, still, to respect truth, on board this American troop transport, which this morning escaped the merciless stormy sea and is now being carried by soft waves as it approaches the American continent, we German prisoners of war celebrate the birthday of our Führer and highest commander. Since lunch was distributed, a small group of fanatics have been agitating for this paradoxical birthday celebration. There is no argument that will deter these men from their intentions. With mixed feelings, most of the prisoners follow the subversive work of these last Mohicans. But these are unable to prevent this mistake, since those who know how to handle such critical situations are still lying in their bunks, seasick. Finally, those who resist are able to influence the fanatics to wait until the last hour of the day for the celebration in order not to provoke the Americans and upset the good relationship that has developed. Now it is time. While a fair number have assembled around the tables and benches, a sergeant from the Air Force approaches the makeshift podium and greets the meeting with the German salute. "Comrades," he begins in a skilled voice without digression. "Following an old tradition, we are assembled here to celebrate in a modest way the birthday of our supreme commander of the army and leader of the German people, Adolf Hitler. We all know in what a fearful situation the Führer, our people, and our fatherland find themselves. But it is not the first time in history that a people has stood on the brink of destruction only to gather itself around a leader for one last immense effort to beat its enemy and make them sue for peace. It may appear impossible to believe in victory, given the situation on the fronts, but as soldiers we have the obligation to remain true to our oath, to arise from our defeat, to trust the Führer in this highest hour of need, and to believe in the victory of our weapons. It is true that we are prisoners and have no influence on the course of events, but that is all the more reason to remember the truth of the Führer's words, with which I end my speech and call to our German brothers and sisters all over the world. Woe to the people that gives up its weapons and delivers themselves to the mercy of their, with a devotion seen only very seldom in people in unusual situations. The men roar in song, Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles. Then the celebration is ended. For 3 days and 2 nights, wind and rain have whipped the Thomas Marshall through the raging sea. Without interruption, heavy breakers lash over the deck and threaten to drown all life. The entire ship cracks and groans as though the devil himself were on board. But again and again the brave ship rights itself and unmercifully slices through the weak bodies of the oncoming waves. In only 2 more hours this terror trip is to be completed, and then we will be near the coast and in calm waters, according to the ship's captain. But now there is no breath of relief in the stinking room. Like imprisoned rats, we hop around the cellar of this dancing ship with our fearful eyes on the thin steel walls, which separate and protect us from the wet, raging elements. For a long time now, the most stiff-necked have become tired of this insane hell dance and long for land. For land? Which land? The recognition hits me hard that we are rejoicing over something that we do not know awaits us. Yes, one land can be like another, but people are not always human beings. But in the first place, we have been delivered to them. Body and soul are being delivered to them. As prisoners and members of a people near destruction, we will set foot without protection on the land of the victors, a victor who has already demonstrated all the faces of humanity from an understanding smile to a merciless grimace. We have stood against the murderous bellow of his cannon, the hail of bombs and his machine guns. We have waded through misery and need, accompanied by terrible hunger and thirst, filth and meanness. Almost unprotected, in ice-cold, grey-filled days and nights, his barbed wire held us with iron clamps. We were spared nothing, nothing at all, until we were loaded on this little ship and required to leave Europe without receiving any news from our families. And finally we met human beings, people of goodwill without reservation, who filled our hungry mouths, exposed themselves to the same fate, and allowed us to vomit the souls from our dishonoured bodies. Who can measure the feelings and perceptions of this lost heap of captured German soldiers on board the Thomas Marshall as they near the American mainland? Who will judge us because of the many misunderstandings dictated by the barbed wire, which makes one more confused than the other one? Whose fault is it that we ended up in this situation, and now stand with a fettered mind in front of problems that cannot be solved without compromise? We are trained in our parents' houses and in the schools to be truthful and to fear God. As youth we learned to love the Führer and fatherland. The loyalty oath and the weapons training for the alleged defense of these ideas complete the young man and seal on him for time and all eternity his individual bondage. But war needs him that way. Even though in other lands the same thing is happening, it is not the same in their eyes. Suddenly the imprisoned soldier is treated worse than a criminal. Everything that was sacred and holy is trampled in smut by his keepers. And they notice nothing, that they carry around the same ideas in another coat and in their name trespass against other people. The gallantry and respect for the vanquished foe is reduced in value and exists only at the fringe of the war as a few hopeful blossoms. Instead of the beginning fair fight, naked violence is practiced. And these are the facts with which we will embark on this strange land tomorrow. But despite it, I will leave all the ballast and every prejudice on board and take my first step into the new world with light baggage. Still, I will stand by my faithful companions, ready to help them at any time until destiny guides us once again back to the beloved homeland. A radiant blue heaven covers the metropolis of New York City like a giant. In the upper bay of the Hudson River, the Thomas Marshall docks as the German prisoners of war assemble on deck to disembark. Greeted by the small island with the Statue of Liberty, it works magic as smiles break across the faces of us foreign soldiers. Soldiers who, despite all our efforts, are conscious that we are prisoners of the freest land under the sun. But our hearts beat in unhappiness, despite the impressive display that comes from all sides. Our amazed focus is on the mighty monuments of stone. The skyscrapers of Manhattan, weathered grey, cold and foreign, completely impersonal, towering in the American sky. Then, in deep shame, we glimpse at our worn uniforms whose colour can no longer be distinguished. Even when everyone had done their very best with what was available not to frighten the unknowing citizens of this war-spared land, our clothing is nothing more than rags. Our appearance depresses everyone on the other side of this great harbour. We four friends stand and take in together the impressive view of the unequalled city. Why, I ask myself and friends, looking toward the skyscrapers, have the Americans built such gigantic structures? It is as easy to explain as the pyramids of the ancient Egyptians, offers Schultz. Then I can imagine that the land here must be extremely expensive, and so they simply built in the direction of heaven. But I would not like to live in those beehives. I like the cottages on the other side of the river much better, declares Hocker. I agree with you, Siegfried chimes in. As impressive as those cement piles are, I wouldn't live in them even for free.